Hi there. In this Adobe Creative Cloud video, we'll quickly look at Photoshop and how to use the selecting tools to create a composite image. So I'm going to quickly open a file that I already have. I'll share this in the comments. Photoshop PSD. So this is what I'm starting with. I'll quickly use the Essentials workspace. Double click on my hand tool to fit the canvas to the work area, and I'll quickly show you what we're working towards. And I'll quickly switch back and forth to this. You could ignore that turquoise line there, it's some sort of an error. So we presently have a bunch of items on a white background. So what we'll do is remove all of those and put them on their own background. I'll start with the quick selection tool with the sand dollar. So the quick selection tool, again, I'm using a 2-column toolbar because my window's kind of small with this laptop, but that's a single column. That's a double column. The quick selection tool is under the magic wand, so I can mouse down on that and pick up the quick selection tool, and it selects based on tones, so it'll select the entire sand dollar if I just click on it up until the tones change. So it goes from off-white to white, so it can detect the edges. And what I'm going to do is quickly cut this selection and then paste it on a new layer. I'm going to do it the long way first, and then I'll show you a quick shortcut. So I can go edit, cut, create a new layer. I'll call this layer sand dollar. Press enter to finish off the name, and then edit, paste. So now that sand dollar's on its own layer. I'm just going to rename this background. I'm going to need to manipulate this, so I won't be able to change the stacking order and some other things about this background if it still has the name background. So if you just double click on that name, you can change the name. I'll call it plate. That'll be the layer that contains the plate, and I'll choose OK. The next one I'll select is the this is a little bowl of a bunch of various shells, so we can use the elliptical marquee tool to select that. So with the elliptical marquee, you can just start your drag at the left edge in the top, right about there. And I got a pretty good selection there, so I don't need to really modify that, but I'll just quickly show you how you can modify that selection if you need to. So if you go to select and transform selection, you can resize that selection. So I'm just going to quickly zoom in so we can see that. My zoom tool is a little bit funny for some reason, and I'll go select transform selection. So if we need to refine that, it's a little bit off on the bottom there. We can resize the area that it selects until we're happy with it. And you can also use your arrow tools on your keyboard to reposition. And I just want to avoid getting any white areas. So once you're happy with your selection, that's good enough for my purposes. Oh, a little more, I'll fiddle with it a bit here. You can just press enter to accept the transformation. And then again, this time I'm going to make sure I have the plate layer selected, because that's where these pixels reside. And you have to, if you right click right inside of the selection with a selection tool, you can use new layer via cut. So that'll do the same thing that I did with the sand dollar, except for it cuts, creates a new layer, and pastes it. So it saves us a couple of steps. And I'm going to double click on that layer and call it bowl of shells. Double click back on my hand to resize my canvas to fit my work area. Next one I'll grab is the logo here. This is the logo for the company whose we're working on this composite image for. So I'm just going to zoom into that. This time I will use a couple of helper keys in conjunction with my elliptical marquee tool. So if I place my cursor in the front, if I want to select from the center out, I can use Alt. And if you want to force a perfect circle, you can hold down Shift. So I'm just going to use Alt and Shift from the center, and then I start dragging. And that gives me a perfect circle. And I think I can reposition this as well by holding down the space bar. So that repositions the starting point again. I'm dragging from the center out, so I just want to place it right in my selection right in the center. I can let go of Shift. I still have Alt and, let go of the space bar. I still have Alt and Shift pressed down. I'm just going to use the space bar a little bit more. Yeah. And there's a really good selection right there. Don't worry if you get it perfect or not. And then I'm going to let go of the space bar, and I'm going to let go of my mouse before I let go of those helper keys. And then again, we're going to right click with any selection tool. These are all selection tools here. And new layer via cut. Whoops. Notice I don't have the plate layer selected there, so I have to try that again. So with the plate layer selected, I'll do that one more time. Layer via cut. And I'll call that logo. Notice I have my feather selected. That's why it gives it that soft edge. So I'm just going to remove that feather. I'm going to go down to 2 pixels. I like to use the feather, but actually for the next I don't need any feather at all. So that should be fine. But that's basically what gives you that soft edge, is the feather. So it's good that we left that on so you can see that. I'm going to double click on my hand tool to zoom back out, and I want to select the coral this time. So what I'm going to do is use my rectangular marquee tool and select that, draw a box around the coral. So basically all of the pixels, I'll better select the plate layer, all of the pixels including the coral and all of these white pixels are selected. So what I want to do is remove the white pixels from this selection. So I'm going to use something similar to the quick selection tool, the magic wand tool, in conjunction with Alt. That will remove the pixels of the color that we click on from the selection. So if I'm just going to zoom in, just let you see that a little better there. So again, I have my magic wand tool. I hold down Alt, and notice you get a little minus sign next to your magic wand tool. I click inside of the white area, but away from the coral. This is coral here. I click on that, and it selects everything. Basically deselects the white pixels. So now I just have the coral selected. So again, with the plate layer selected, I'm going to right click. I still have a selection tool. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose, try that again. I think I have to use a different selection tool. There we go. Layer via cut. So yeah, not any selection tool. And I'll call that coral. So that's a neat process there. I'm going to press enter to finish naming it. I'm going to double click on my hand tool to resize my work area. The next one I'll grab is this. I'll grab this muscle here. I'll zoom into that. Make sure I have my plate layer selected before I forget. And I'm going to use the lasso tool this time. There's a bunch of straight edges, so I can show you how to use the lasso tool to select a random, or basically any arrangement of pixels, but then you can force it to go to straight lines with by holding down Alt. So it's a little tricky. So if I'm out, I select my lasso tool, and I'll start with this little curve here. So I click and drag to select my pixels. This is kind of curvy. Oh, this is pretty curvy, so I'm just going to select that. Notice my feather up at the top there is at 2. That's what I used last time with this tool, so that's a sticky setting. That's a good setting to use with your lasso. Now I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm let go of my mouse and it becomes it looks like a little coat hanger. And now I'm selecting straight lines. So I'm not holding my mouse down. I just let go of the mouse while I'm holding down Alt. Then when I want to switch back to the regular lasso tool, I mouse down, I let go of Alt, and then I can go back to the regular. This one's pretty straight there too, so I'm going to hold down Alt, and then mouse down, let go of Alt. This time that one's pretty straight there, but it changed angle, so I can hold down Alt again and let go of the mouse tool. And again, I'm not holding the mouse down while I'm drawing that straight line. I'm just holding down Alt. Then I'm going to mouse down, I'm going to let go of Alt, and I'll finish this selection here. Again, it's not too perfect. I'm not worrying about that for this demonstration. Oh, there's another straight line, so I'm going to hold down Alt, mouse down, and that's pretty good. That's good enough for my purposes. You'll always want to close the starting point with the ending point, otherwise it'll draw a straight line for you. You won't have as much control over the selection. And again, that's a 2-pixel feather there, so it's probably okay. Probably soften the edge enough so you can't see my little mistakes there. But again, you can use Alt and Shift to select pixels like I showed you in the previous exercise. So I've got the plate layer selected, muscle selected. I think I can just right click right on it and layer via cut. I'll call it one muscle. Press enter to finish that off and double click on my hand tool. And the last one we're going to grab is this Nautilus. I'm going to use the magnetic lasso tool. So just zoom into that and mouse down on my lasso tool. So this uses AI to see the edge. So I could just click right on the edge that I want to start tracing with the tip of my pointer. I just click and let go. I don't hold down, and then you just trace around the edge that you want to select. And it's pretty obvious to Photoshop where the pink shell ends and the gray and dark gray pattern background begins. But we're telling it what edge we want to use as the edge of the selection. Whoops, went off a little bit, but it still picked it up. So now I have a pretty good selection. It selected a little much there. I wiggled my mouse, so if I go back to the regular lasso tool, I can snip those pixels out by holding Alt and starting my drag outside of the selection and just taking a bite. What you do out here doesn't matter because you're deselecting. Let go, and there we go. Looks pretty good. And again, with the plate layer selected, and I can just right click on it with any selection tool except for the magic wand apparently, and layer via cut. And I'm going to call this Nautilus. Now what I want to do is move all of these objects onto the plate. Again, what I'm working towards here is this example here. So I'll put the sand dollar there, then my Nautilus, my mussel, and my coral to start with. So double click on the hand to resize. Sand dollar, I have to select the layer, use my move tool, and you can click and drag. That's pretty obvious. You can also use your arrows if you want an exact move. Every time you tap the arrows, it moves at 1 unit. If you hold down Shift when you drag, it will move it a little bit more quickly. So next I'll grab the mussel. Again with my move tool. And the angle of the mussel is slightly different in this one, so I use my free transform to change the angle. So edit, free transform, Control T is your shortcut. And if you drag outside of the edge of the mussel, you can rotate that mussel. I'll press enter to finish my transform. And again, I'll just double check what I'm doing here. Oh, the muscles, the sandals off to the edge of the plate. I'm just going to move that over there. Nice. And then my Nautilus. So So again, I choose my Nautilus layer, and then I can drag using my move tool wherever I want to put that. Again, I'll just double check. It looks like it's kind of near the middle. It's probably pretty good. And then my coral. Select my coral layer with the move tool. Right around there. And my bowl of shells is over on the top left. So that's everything except for the logo, and we're going to do something special with that logo. So I'm going to grab that logo and I'm going to put it over on the edge, kind of top right. Where's that logo? That's good, but you'll notice it's turquoise in the demonstration there, or the example. So we can go to Edit and Image, Adjustments, and Invert, and that makes it turquoise. It's the opposite. Brown apparently is turquoise. Now I want a few copies of this as well, and they get larger as I increase the number. So the second one's a little larger than the first, and the third is a little larger than the second. So I can use Alt drag for those. So I'm using Alt on my keyboard, and you get the little kind of copy icon there, and I can just drag that a little bit. And now I want to free transform. So edit free transform. Control T is what I use in real life, and then if I just drag on a corner handle, it'll resize the width at the same proportion as the height. And then to finish it off, you press Enter on your keyboard. I'm going to do that one more time, and I'll make it a little bigger. Again, drag on a corner handle. Now I want to get this plate on its own. Basically, I want to remove all of this extra stuff from this plate layer. So what I'm going to do is add a new layer for the background that I'll fill with white. So what I'm going to do is finish that transformer, so I can press Enter. And I'm just going to hide all of the other layers so I can just see the plate layer. So to do that, you can just drag through the little eyeball on all the other layers. And what I'm going to do is something similar to what I did with the coral. So on the plate layer, I'm going to use my lasso tool this time, and I'm just going to drag, just select the plate plus some white pixels, but I'm careful not to touch the plate with my lasso or any of the objects outside of the white area there, any of those little bits that are left over. And then I want to remove these white pixels, so I'm just going to use my magic wand tool with Alt. So what I have to do here is quickly add another layer, and then I'll remove all of this, the contents of this, and the new layer will show through. So I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call it background. And Enter, and just move it to the bottom below plate. And then with the plate layer selected, I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard or backspace. Whoops. I'm just going to Control Z that. First of all, I have to go select inverse. Control Z, by the way, is undo. And now I hit delete. And now I'll bring back all of my other layers there. So it looks pretty good. I'm just going to do one more thing before I finish, and what I'm going to quickly do is add a drop shadow to all of these objects, so they look like actual objects sitting on the plate, and the plate looks like a object sitting on the background. So I'm just going to deselect all of this. So select, deselect, and with any of the layers selected, I'm just going to quickly add an effect and drop shadow. And I like my light to come from the top left, so I'm going to move that little line over there. And that's a pretty good drop shadow as it is. So I'm just going to make the spread a little bigger. And this size makes it softer. So I'll make that a little softer. So that means the light's not quite as harsh hitting it. Everything else is good. So I've got a 72 opacity. Blend mode is normal. I'm using black. I think it's all the stock setup. I'll choose OK. Now I don't want to have to adjust drop shadow for all of these objects, so I can quickly alt drag the drop shadow onto these other layers. So I'll select, I'll hold down Alt, and I'll just drag that drop shadow onto both shells, and then let go. Drag that drop shadow onto logo copy. Drag that drop shadow onto logo copy. Whoops, I think we got too much there. I'm going to just undo that. Control Z. I want just the drop shadow. Alt drag drop shadow. There we go. And Alt drag drop shadow. I think you just have to click on the next layer that you want first and then Alt drag. Yeah, that's what you want to do. So that looks pretty good. And finally the plate. No drop shadow in the background. So that's a pretty good composite image. I'm just going to quickly crop this and then I'm done. So we have this crop tool here. There you go. And press Enter on your keyboard to apply the crop. And there we go. So that's quite a few tools. Basically all of the selection tools, creating new layers via cut, adding some effects, and cropping. Thanks so much for watching.